Story 1. This took place in the Australian bush around 10:11 at night. I was 17, leading a staggered column of about 60 cadets to our detachment campsite. Due to light discipline rules, only myself at the very front of the group and the other flight commander at the rear had torches on. This was so that any vehicles coming along the trail could see us, and so that most of the cadets could maintain their night vision. We were camouflaged up and thus difficult to see at night. As we walked along, I periodically looked to my sides and kept seeing what looked like dewdrops on the ground, almost like tiny blue gems glinting in my torchlight either side of the road. I had to maintain my position in the formation, so I couldn't get a good look at what they were. However, after a while, we stopped for a very brief break, and I took the opportunity to have a closer look. Walking over to the side of the trail, I spotted a small cluster of the diamonds and focused my head torch on them. Rather than seeing diamonds or dewdrops or anything remotely pleasant, I instead saw a group of about 5 large spiders just crouching in the leaf litter and staring at me. They looked like huntsmen's, which are about the size of an adult's hand. Sweeping my head around, I realized there were thousands of the things, all over the ground, some on the trunks of trees, and everywhere around me, glaring at the light affixed to my head. I had a very brisk walk back to the formation and attempted to play it cool while screaming in my head. Being a massive arachnophobe, I have no fucking clue how I managed to set up a tent and spend the next week in that cursed forest. Story 2. Went on a mountain hike in Transylvania with a group of friends from school, and way up, after maybe 12 to 14 kilometers of trekking, we saw a house was in the middle of nowhere. It had a barn with a few animals, couple of cows, chicken, etc. As we get closer, we see a few people, a guy and 5 to 6 women. Not sure if there were more inside. The dude comes to greet us, barely speaking the language. We had a hard time understanding what he's saying. They lived without electricity, gas, anything. This is in the early 90s, so there's no internet, mobile phones to worry about, at least for most people. Anyway, they all looked weird, kind of dumb expressions on their face. We can barely understand each other. They asked us who's the president now and if we want some milk. They look at our clothes and shoes weirdly. Curious. Like, who knows when is the last time they had human contact? Or maybe there were more crazies around those parts. Dunno. Not sure to this day what was going on. It's not typical in the region, so we kind of freaked out, especially because the dude looked a bit disturbed, and we were too young. We were looking around to see if there's more of them. Paranoia was getting to us, thinking there must be a village nearby. What was also weird is that all the women kept their distance and never got close to us, like he was guarding them or checking us out if it's safe for them. One of my friends kept saying, "We don't want their milk, and we need to go, because it's getting dark." We walked calmly for a while, then when we thought we're out of their sight, bolted like crazy out of there. Needless to say, we camped after a few hours, and we always had one person awake to keep watch. We told people that were living in the villages near that area, about the mountain people, and they didn't believe us. They said nobody lives there, up in the mountains. Story 3, I used to work in low-income home weatherization, basically giving free shit away to help lower electricity and gas bills and make the home more comfortable to people who really needed it. Installing doors and insulation and so forth. One step in qualifying a home is testing combustion appliances to make sure they're not emitting carbon monoxide into the living space. Because if they are, and we seal up the house, we could kill the whole family. During a pre-inspection of a home on the outskirts of the city, I asked to see the owner's water heater. He tells me that it's in the basement, which is fairly normal, and I tell him I have to inspect it before work can start. So he goes into the kitchen and starts moving the refrigerator. Turns out the entry into the basement is underneath carpeting beneath the fridge. I should note that I went and did thousands of homes over the years and had never seen such a thing. But whatever, needs to be done regardless. And so I pull out my flashlight and shine it down the stairs to check out the layout, but really to look for black widow spiders because fuck black widows. At this point, I notice a dead cat, mostly down to a skeleton. Not my favorite sight, but really common in crawl spaces and basements. I take a few steps down the stairs and continue my spider check, and notice another couple of small animal skeletons. At this point, I start to worry about gas or poisons, or something equally dangerous, and start looking closer. There are animal skeletons everywhere, at least 10 on a cursory look. Some of them are so degraded I can't determine what they used to be. I also happen to notice that this guy is waiting at the entrance a little too quietly with his hand on the door. Something clicks in my brain and I get this immense sense of danger. I'm about 4 steps from the door, being clear to close. I have no partner on the job with me. There's death all around me, and I realize just how hidden the entrance to the basement really was. I noped the fuck out, told the guy I needed extra tools and would be back, and marked the job as non-feasible for health and safety as I was driving away. I have no idea if I was actually in any danger. It could have been completely innocent, but I still remember the adrenaline rush and sense of doom, and sometimes you just don't take chances. Also, edit, I'm getting asked frequently if I reported this guy to the police, and there's a lot of concern about the dead animals. I did not file a formal report, mainly because nothing I saw was entirely out of the ordinary. Crawl spaces in basements have venting at the base of the house, and it's really common for animals to squeeze in and then not be able to get back out. If you have space under your house, there's a decent chance something has died down there. You get used to it when your job takes you down there frequently. Now, this was an extreme case, and clearly everything put together raised concern enough for me to get the fuck out. But the sad fact of working with low-income families is that you see how lousy their lives can be. You learn not to do anything to make their lives any harder, and I took a lot of pride from the fact that my job made their lives just a bit better. I didn't think that my being scared for a minute was enough to involve the police. You know? Story 4. This is probably less scary than a lot of the other posts, but I was pretty sure I was going to be the nameless victim at the start of a horror movie to show how dangerous the monster is. Basically, my dad and I were walking through the woods when we came across a young moose leg lying on the ground. It looked like it had been violently torn off with no sign of the rest of the moose anywhere. It was fresh with blood still on the wound, probably no more than a couple hours old. My dad is a pretty skilled hunter, so he handed me his axe that he was carrying and told me to watch for wolves while he started looking for tracks. After a little bit, he came back saying, "That's weird. Normally, if it was wolves, you'd be able to find paw prints, but I can't see any. Also, no bear prints, so I have no idea what killed this." And so I'm like, "You didn't find any tracks at all?" And his very reassuring response was, "Well, I did find what appears to be the mama moose tracks headed this way," showing me the tracks. "You can see how her stride is a lot longer here. Whatever killed her, baby, she didn't want to fight it, she just took off running." He then pulls out his bear spray and holds it at the ready as we kept walking deeper into the woods with the unnamed non-track leaving predator armed with bear spray and an axe. Story 5. This was quite a few years ago now, but me and my friend had this really cool spot to hang out in the woods. You had to walk in the middle of a creek for a kilometer and duck through sharp bushes and thistles. The hike was well rewarding though. The spot was about half an acre big. It was pure green grass on an incline with beautiful clear water ponds everywhere. There was tons of wildlife and the butterflies lived there. So there was always tons of butterflies. So the story begins on the way to this place. My friend Levi and I were walking along the river on the way to the spot. It was in the middle of a valley and nobody else ever went down there. Suddenly, Levi stopped moving and ducked into a bush. I did the same because I thought there must have been a large animal somewhere. I saw him staring up the hill, and so I looked up too. There was 2 people standing at the top of the hill, heaving back and forth a lifeless body. We watched as they threw the lifeless corpse down the hill, as it bounced off the trees and eventually got stuck on a tree at the bottom. Then they took off. Me and him were terrified and I was shaking so badly I couldn't speak. So we decided to verify it was a real body. Levi got about 4 feet away before screaming, "It has nostrils! It's real! Run!" So of course we take off running, and I glance back to see the 2 people run back to the top of the hill. Me and him ran 2 kilometers through thick brush and trees to get away from them. The next day we were with his parents driving to town, and we saw like 10 fire trucks at the school closest to the forest. Terrified, we told his parents, bawling our eyes out, worried that we were going to get murdered. His mom started laughing at us and said, "They are training for search and rescue. That was a dummy that the firemen had to find. I never slept as good as I did that night. Story 6. My boyfriend and I were backpacking through rural Tasmania a few years ago. While on a bus, we were discussing our plans for the ensuing 2 weeks. The girl in the seat in front turns around and offers us a place to stay in her town. We declined as we were headed elsewhere first, but she gave us her mobile number and said that she and her partner would love to have us. A few days later, we decide to take them up on their offer. We call her, and she says they're happy to host us. So far, so good. They meet us at the train station, and immediately something feels off. It's really difficult to explain, but it's that primal, ineffable feeling in your guts that tells you that something isn't right. We ignored our guts and followed them. They lead us straight out of town. We ask them where we're going, and they say that they live on the outskirts. This town is creepy as fuck. It's an old mining town that has been largely abandoned, and as we walk the 15-odd minutes to their home, the houses get shittier, with boarded-up windows, overgrown gardens, and no people in sight. Eventually, we reach the house at the very end of the town. It's their house. We go in. Set up in the middle of the living room is a single mattress with a sheet hanging around it. They show us around the house except for one door which stays closed. When I asked what was behind it, they pretended not to hear. Our room has a made bed, chest of drawers, and looks like a normal room. It seems weird that they sleep on mattresses in the living room when they have a guest room. We go back into the living room and look around. Knives. A lot of knives. My boyfriend asks if they go hunting. Number. The partner hands one of the knives to my boyfriend and asks him to open it. It's a massive fucking Bowie knife with what looks like blood staining around the edges of the blade. My boyfriend laughs awkwardly and sets it down. They have a tattoo gun. To practice. My boyfriend asks if they have any tattoos. Number. There's a small axe at the door. I ask if they collect wood. Number. Suddenly the guy says he wants to go to the shops. We agree quickly because we're creeped out and want to get back into the town. The four of us leave and they start walking in the opposite direction to the town. I say that the town is back the other way. The guy says this way would be more interesting because it goes up through the trees. He says that they have never been up the mountain before, but he knows the area and it would take the same amount of time. I tell my boyfriend that I'm freaking out, but he thinks it's okay. We follow them into the trees. The path goes up the mountain. We are going in the total opposite direction of the town. The girl turns around to her partner and whispers, "So where was the place again?" My boyfriend and I freeze. I say I want to take the road back to town and start walking. When the four of us arrive in the one shop in town, no one recognizes the couple, and this is a really small town. We make an excuse that we want to go look at sights and that we'll catch up with them later, and instead book a hotel room and freak out. I did some snooping on the area. Their house had an extra room, behind the mystery door, and a basement. The path that we were taking led straight out of town and up the mountain. There was no way it could loop back into town. So yeah, pretty sure we narrowly avoided being murdered. Or maybe they were just massive weirdos. TBH, the creepiest thing was the fact that there was no drug paraphernalia at all. The state of the house and the weird behavior would have been understandable if they were intoxicated, but that wasn't the case. Story 7, I've told this before, and will stick with me till on my deathbed, was a high schooler mid-90s. Went fishing off the coast of Corpus Christi with uncle and cousins. We were about 18 miles out, been out all day, was around 8 p.m., and were gearing up to head back in. It was before DST, so sun was already going down and getting dark. I was at the stern bringing in the traps. As I'm pulling it in, I see this glow about 100 to 150 feet off. It's nothing I have ever seen. Best way I can describe it. It's like if you stuck a toaster underwater and the orange glowing elements were still working, but still not quite, and it was very large. We were on a 38-foot boat. All I can guess it was 5 to 6 times bigger. Kinda hard to judge sizes on open water. The water above it is not churning, but you can tell that it is disturbing it. IDK hard to explain. Almost like it was pushing the water up. This whole time I'm expecting something to break the surface and just frozen. You know, like when you're walking the dog or something at night, not really paying attention, and a cat or possum runs out. How you freeze and everything stops? I'm like that the whole time. Finally, I let out a call to my uncle. He comes around, stops right by me. He's not saying anything, just kind of like me. This thing object or whatever the hell just jets out towards the Gulf. I'm talking like not picking up speed. Instantly jets out. All I say is, "You seen that before?" My uncle just says, "Nope, let's go." I say absolutely nothing the way back in, he doesn't either. My cousins ask us what happened. All my uncle says is nothing. Now what could it have been? I've researched it on and off for past 25 years, especially when the internet came out. I've found a lot of people seeing something very similar. There is a naval base down there, but no sub-bases we know about. It kind of took over my life for a lot of years. If we have something like that though, we've been holding out on technology that could change our lives. Story 8. In southwest Georgia, in the dense hardwoods around 8 miles out of the town of Attapulgis, I had a pretty disturbing encounter. I was around 16 years old 5 years ago. My dad and I went hunting. We always climbed different trees anywhere from 1 mile to 4 miles apart. We did this so that maybe if we startled any deer, they'd wander towards the other hunter. Anyway, as I was climbing the tree with my tree lounge, I heard something below me, around 12 feet down at this point, about 30 yards out, sounded like twigs cracking. So I stop and look behind me to see just the dense woods. Figure it's a small critter, squirrel or some such. About half an hour later, I'm settled in my tree and the sun is starting to peek through the leaves. It's no longer in the twilight of dawn, it's becoming morning. As I'm sitting in my comfy ASF stand, I notice a palmetto bush. Normally this isn't anything odd, but the fact that I noticed it threw me off. Why did I notice it? I sat and stared and couldn't figure out what it was that caught my eye. A palmetto bush looks like the top of a palm tree that sits on the ground and has a few sort of hare's tails that stick up and produce some pretty tasty berries. Well, I couldn't figure it out, so I keep scanning the area. A couple hours passed and I keep noticing this damn bush. Why? Why is it so spectacular all of a sudden? It's a bush, damn it. A normal palmetto bush. Whatever, I kept on hunting for these deer. Around 11 a.m., my pa rings me on the pager, says he wants to walk to what we called the honey hole, a good hunting location full of deer around this time. Has a little stream, plenty of cover for them, and plenty of sneaky passages for us. Okay, pa, I'll meet you there. As I begin packing up, I notice twigs snapping again. It came from the bush. So I look, and I figured out what it was that stood out so damn much. There was a MF man staring at me through the bush. He had a scraggly white beard, a tan coat, and some jumper suit pants on. He had a hood up that was the color of the bush. Not only that, he had covered his face in mud, a common hunting camouflage technique. Noticing this, I grabbed my Remington 700 and pointed towards the ground near the man. Soon as I did this, he let out a terrifying cackle and darted towards the direction of a creek about 150 yards away from my tree. I watched him through my scope. I could hear him and see him cackling the whole way. And the scariest part, he leapt across a creek that was about 9 feet wide, in a single footing jump. Now where he leapt, it might have been only 5 or 6 feet wide, but even then, I wasn't as scared as I was disturbed. I had a rifle, a damn good one too. 6-round capacity, bolt action. I have never missed a shot on any animal with my rifle, so I felt safe and confident in my skills and equipment. But even then, it was strange as all hell. The land was a public hunting club's land, which is why I didn't shoot him. I got down and continued to the honey hole, where I told Pa about the situation. Anyhow, we kept hunting that location in the future after the incident, never saw him again. Told the club about him, and nobody had heard of anything like it. But about 3 months later, he was spotted by someone else who also used tree climber stands. They said they had been hunting a specific hunting site in a certain tree for a couple days at the time. One morning at dawn, they climbed into the tree, and after getting settled in, they saw something eye level out the corner of their eye. When they looked, it was the same description of the man I saw, but he was in an adjacent tree hanging upside down like a sloth, staring at them. Note this is about 20 feet up, When they spotted him and threatened to shoot him, he cackled and climbed down the tree very quickly in a matter of a few seconds. He dashed off into the planted pines behind the guy, and that was the last I've heard of the weirdo. So yeah, long story, but disturbing as all hell. Story 9, I was out on the coast in the Pacific Northwest. You drive west through the mountains, hit the coast, and Hawaii 101 North-South has just the most gorgeous collection of habitats. You can be on sea cliffs or near tidal pools, or in the coastal pines with ferns the size of small cars, or areas that get swallowed up by the Pacific that have little microbiomes inside the felled trees, and you can see the natural battle for high ground. Areas in which ferns and fungi are more prevalent than any animal. Emerald groves dotted with little amanita mushrooms, these little rubies and gold nuggets standing out against the reddish-brown pine needles. For the most part, out here, you're safe. Being keenly aware of your surroundings should keep you from disappearing, and using a walking stick will save you a broken leg or a fall, all of which are very real dangers. There's big cats and bear and elk and moose, but so long as you're not stupid and you stay aware, you're gonna be okay. But every now and then, a new large cat warning sign goes up for a few weeks, a new no poaching sign appears for a while, etc. If you travel through enough of it, you'll find the meth labs and hobo huts, and those really are the most dangerous animals you're going to run into. It's early in the season, and I'm on this spit, which by December is just nailed by waves and disappears in the storms. Part of it was engineered for this, and the main path has little hills on the left and right sides, so the whole path is effectively a massive game trail that's always the first thing to flood. The wildlife chill at the very open-end area at the sea, and every now and again a cat will chase a deer up and make a kill, then drag it off to the sides. You'll sometimes see marks of struggle, but more often just remains off path. The sea and I are very familiar with each other here. But just this one night, man, it was getting dark, and I'm at the open wildlife area, thinking how I gotta get back to the car. I checked my flashlights, but I had burned through them 12 to 16 hours earlier, in the pre-dawn hours. I check the comforting, rhythmic lights of 2 landmarks and triangulate where I'm at, and tuck that away. I put the lights away and figure if I can't find my way back in the dark, then I don't belong out there at this hour ever again. I'm slowly walking back, keeping a steady and committed pace, but not running or making myself a prey target. But something just wasn't right. I text my wife and let her know I'm okay. Just a little freaked out, but I'll be back at my car when signal returns in 60 minutes. The faint glow of my cell was the last light I'd see. Something was wrong. I felt like I was being followed, but thought my nerves got the better of me. I heard some snapping twigs and rustling, and all the wildlife waking up or going to sleep. All of it was normal, until it wasn't. I thought I'd heard whispers, but knew it was just the whispers of the wind over the water and splash on the rocks and animals going to sleep. I reach for my phone and realize I'd have no signal, and it would just give me away, so I get back to it. I get maybe 20 feet, and there it is again. I didn't see any bear or elk or anything, and if it was a large cat, I'd never hear it or see it coming. If it was a deer, it'd be stumbly, bumbly loud. I hear a snap, more like a thock. And this was no tiny twig, so whatever it wasn't small. I keep thinking, it's a person. It's a person. Someone has seen me out here and either wants my gear and cash or to kill me. I make it in the final half-mile stretch, and by now I'm sure I would have been attacked if it was an animal. I see the faint not nature parking lot in the scant moonlight and could hit it with my light if it worked. I spin around thinking, fuck it. I can bolt because it's definitely a person or people, and I'm better off defending myself than I am just being attacked. I break out my phone and shine it down this looming corridor of coast, the trees flanking the path, hugging the light and kind of holding it in. Nothing. I let out a sigh of relief. Snap. Again, but behind me now, so whatever it was made its way around me. It's close. A deer takes off in the sedge, and I hear more and more snaps and shuffling and branches catching on jackets, and it hits me, and I put 2 and 2 together. They're trying to get me before I can get to the car. This goes through my head, and I worry it's the last thought I'll ever have. I move off the path one would anticipate and try to skirt around the whole situation because, hey, maybe it's still just me freaking out, man. I cut through the sedge and wildberries and get some distance, and cut back through to the main trailhead parking lot. I had seen no people all morning, day, evening, which was odd because there's half a dozen cars and I would have seen one of them. I get to the car and fumble my keys and get in, fire the thing up before my ass hits the seat and rip it the fuck out of there. Behind me in the light cast by the small restrooms and soft moonlight are 7 or 8 males. Some are still running at the car, but slowing down as I put distance between us. I saw the faint, soft, silvery glint of blades in some of their hands and one machete, and the rest had sticks or other blunt-type objects. I don't know what the fuck they wanted, but they wanted it really bad. I've been hiking there for years and will not be going back. Story 10, I come from a village fairly up in the mountains, the mighty Karakoram Ranges. As most of you might have known about the last hiding place of Osama bin Laden, Abbottabad. My village is further 40 miles northwards as crow flies. By road, it is almost 2 hours drive through mountain road and then a mountain trail. Last leg of journey is upon foot, the place being a steep mountainside. I grew up there, and my childhood and adolescence was spent in the jungle that surrounded the village, in the mountain streams. There were local lore and legends about the forest, which were universally believed into. When I was 19 or so and was studying in an Abbottabad college, few of my friends decided to spend a few days trekking through the mountains. We were most interested to explore a cave, where, the legend says, a mountain spring just disappears. Supposedly, if you were lucky enough to go deep, very deep in the cave, there was a gold mine, with sand of gold strewn by the stream. However, jinns guard the place, so we gathered at my place some 3-class fellows from city. We were accompanied by 4 more from within my village. Thus, myself included, we formed a party of 8 young men. I am speaking of 1973. We did not have any maps with us. We knew the general area, knew landmarks, and except for 3 city guys, all knew how to move about in jungle and walk the mountains. We walked, slept in the open, fished, ate wild fruits, and dried food from home, and gossiped as we trekked along. The ascent was steep, unending with jungle all around. A week later, we entered an area that we had never visited earlier. There were rocks, boulders, small springs and streams, and trees were less dense. We thought that the stream that disappears into the cave must be around somewhere. That night we were dog-tired. After a very stiff climb, we took our meal, laid out our canvases, and were asleep very soon. I have no idea how long did we sleep. However, I was woken up as I noticed someone brushing my hair. Just as I turned in my sleep and was to emit the standard cry, "What is it?" I found a hand over my mouth and a whisper, "I am X name of a friend, quite, shh. Wake up others, just as I woke you up." No sound, before I could even ask why. I heard sound of a woman giggling, then a low humming sound. I woke up the next friend, who woke up the next. Soon we all were fully awake, and hearing giggling, woman laughing around, and then we heard heavy footsteps in the distance. Someone or thing very heavy was walking with heavy steps, slowly but towards us. I had a torch on me. I turned it on. All we saw was trees, boulders, rocks, but nothing else. It was all quiet. Fearing that batteries would run out, I turned the switch off. We all huddled closer, packed the canvas sheets and the bed sheets, some said in the darkness, "Put on your shoes and make no noise." We just sat together on a moonless night and could not see much since clouds were blocking the starlight. We could hear the sound of a woman laughing and heavy steps walking around us. Finally, my patience ran out. I was young, very foolish, and patience was not my virtue. I said it loud to my friends, "I am not sitting like a chicken fearing the knife. Let us see who is this thing." Surprisingly, everyone said, "Yes, we must." We decided to talk louder than on, and if we had to move, we planned to stick very close, and in pairs. Column of 2 people in pairs, 4 pairs. Then some said, "Who are you? Show us." Within a few seconds, we could feel that ground around had a lot of folks. We turned on the lights, and we saw at least 10 to 12 things surrounding us. Not monkeys. There are many up there in mountains, but they were not monkeys at all. Not humans, but human-like. Hairy, broad, 6.5 feet to 7 feet tallish, but not like gorillas either. round to elongated faces, dark hair covered them. Then some said, "The air smells weird." Some else said, "Must be their stink." But no, it did feel different, and it was not a bad smell at all. Then we knew another thing. The forest was completely silent. The sound of nights in the jungle, insects, birds, wild animals had stopped. The wind had stopped. It was abnormally silent. The wind gives a sound as it flows through jungle trees. Then I turned the light on again of my torch. Those things were gone. However, we all knew they were watching us. Somehow we knew. I could feel eyes piercing my being even though it was dark. We all agreed that we were being watched very closely and intently. Another friend took torch from me and pointed all around us. On a huge boulder, some 20 feet away, stood a giant looking at us. Same appearance as the rest, but far taller, 7 to 8 feet tall, looking at us. We began to panic. The very still air, total lack of any sound at all, darkness in these freakish things, belief in jinns, demons, all began to act. Then some said, "Do not run. If we run, they will harm all of us. Stick together. Recite verses from Quran." And he spoke to that thing, telling him that we came in peace, will not harm them, and bear no ill intent. Then we heard a giggle, and a woman approached us. She was dressed as a wealthy woman of that area, in mid-40s, long hair, milky white. People in our region are fair BTW. She said in softest tone, "Do not get any further. We must return." Then she disappeared in the night. Just then, the jungle came back to life. Usual sounds of critters and insects, birds, air flowing through trees, the sound of air as it passes through trees. The strange things were gone. We stayed there waiting for the daybreak and returned. Now I'm old, 65 years old. I am a grandfather. I have seen many places. I do not know what did we encounter. I never returned to that area. Story 11. I can't take credit for this story because it happened to my younger brother, but it is such a creepy story that he still doesn't like to talk about it. My twin brother and I were in college when my younger brother was a junior in high school, and he was the only brother left on one end of the house. We live out in the country in the middle of nowhere. Nothing but farmland wherever you look. Our house was a standard long rectangular house, with our parents' master suite on one end and our bedrooms on the completely opposite end. Between these ends were open concept kitchen, dining, and living room spaces. You could look from one end of the house and see all the way to the other end if both bedrooms on each end were open. My brother, a big guy, 6'4", 250 pounds, was getting home from football practice around 4:30 to 5 p.m. and said he was the only one home at the time. Our mom is a school teacher, and our dad farms and works in town as well. Our parents were still working at the time. He came into the house in the back door and was walking through the living room to head to his bedroom. His bedroom was the room at the end of our hallway, completely opposite from our parents' master suite. Maybe if I do a good job describing our end of the house, I can help explain what happens later. Right as you are leaving the living room to enter our hallway and bedrooms, there are 4 doors. First door on the right was my bedroom, and completely opposite my bedroom is our shared bathroom for us 3 brothers. As you walk down the hallway, the second door on your left is my twin brother's room, and my younger brother has his room at the end of the hallway. My younger brother's room has a small area you walk in, then you immediately walk to your right to enter the main part of his bedroom. So if his bedroom doors open, all you see, if you are in the hallway, is a small entrance facing a wall with light coming in from the open bedroom space on the right. Back to the story. As my brother is walking through the living room and about to enter the hallway, he looks down the hallway to his open bedroom door. He explained that he didn't know why, but he had the deepest pit in his stomach and felt every single hair on his arms stand on end. Something felt wrong to him, and he froze as he entered the hallway. Once he got into the hallway and was looking at his bedroom door, he said he saw something beginning to peer around the doorway. He knew exactly what it was, and the only way he could describe it was, it looked like my forehead was peering around the doorframe, getting ready to look right at me. He instantly got the sensation that he didn't need to see what was fixing to show up, all the way peering around his door, so he immediately bolted to the left for our bathroom and slammed the door. He said he held his back up against the door and immediately heard someone running down our hallway, past the bathroom into our living room. The worst part was when he could hear him slowly walking back to the bathroom door and just stand there. We get absolutely terrible cell reception where we live, so he tried calling our parents but couldn't get a hold of either of them. He stayed in our bathroom with his back up against the door for about an hour until our mom made it home. He says until she got there, he could tell someone was on the other side of that door. When he told us about this story, we just laughed and said maybe it was your doppelganger coming to get you. And he absolutely believes it was something like that. He was so scared during the moment he said, and he just knew I was not supposed to see what was coming around the door. He's still scared to stay alone at that end of the house, and now he's 27. Story 12. First, yes, I have done drugs and a number of hallucinogens in my life, but I was 100% clean for months when this happened, so I know what I saw. I just can't explain how it was there. I used to live in northern Canada, not crazy high up like in the territories, but far enough north that it's snowy 7 or 8 months out of the year. Lots of forest, small city, surrounded on all sides by huge forests with bears, cougars, wolves, coyotes, moose. All that great white north stuff. And I've come across a lot of bears and moose living at the bottom of a hill that's the edge of a forest. At least half a dozen bears every summer and a moose once or twice a year. I happen to go out on late-night walks frequently on my road, which is pretty secluded. Just a straight road, forest on one side and flat land on the other with street lamps every couple 100 feet. One night I saw something wrong, and I know I'm just some jerk off on the internet just making a comment, but I swear on the life of my dead best friend, not related to the story, but OP said serious, that this is what I remember. I'm walking back home about 2, maybe 3 a.m. in the morning in mid-July on my road. Couple clicks from home, but I've walked this way a couple dozen times. I've been followed by bears, but they fuck off as soon as a truck rolls around every couple minutes. I carry bear mace, so not too worried. I'm walking back home, and on the flat land next to me, which is about half a click wide and long, I see this yellow in the opening. Keyword I. Just sitting there with this pear-shaped black body, looked like a black bear loafing around. It's maybe 300 or 400 feet away, and the streetlight was in my eyes the first time I saw it. I keep walking forward, but I know to keep my eye out for it, so I reach for my bear mace as a precaution. I turn my head, and the fucking thing starts moving, but not like a bear, or a moose, or a cougar, or timber wolf, or anything I've ever seen before. It's silhouetted by the moon, so there's enough faint light to sort of light up the opening field once I was out of the street lamp and my eyes could adjust. I must have made 4 checks to make sure I was really seeing this thing right. It was hunched over, almost bipedal. It almost moved like an ape. But this thing's torso and limbs were so bizarre. They were narrow, but it looked like it was covered in a torn blanket or something. When it started to move, its limbs seemed to stretch out way more than they should. The arms looked the length of its fucking upper body. At this point, I feel the ice shoot up my spine and everything is slowing down. My mind is racing and I start walking faster, never breaking eye contact with this thing. It starts to move the same way as I am, slowly turning towards the road. Now at this point, if you live up north, you know a bear can outrun you, so you best stay where you are and let the thing go about its business and they will just leave you alone. I stop. It stops. I don't move. I don't lift a finger. I stand in the darkness between the streetlights, watching the silhouette with yellow eyes sitting there. A minute must have passed by or more. I don't know. Time felt like it was standing still. I was so terrified. I'm holding my breath, just waiting for this thing to leave. God, I wish it did. As I stand there thinking of what I should do, looking both ways for any sign of a car, with nobody in sight, I look back to the thing in the field. It starts moving forward again, but not it's making a sharp turn to the road. It keeps doing this bizarre movement pattern, again as I can only describe as an ape with narrow limbs, and keeps its pace. It starts shambling towards the road, now only 100 feet ahead of me. It's walking directly towards a streetlight, moving about as fast as someone walking with no purpose would. Maybe I scared it before when I walked faster? As it got closer, I was feeling relieved. I knew what it was. Of course, dumbass me scaring the shit out of myself over a fucking bear I've probably seen 3 times that year. Fucker probably smelled food in someone's trash. I wish to God that was what I saw. This thing shouldn't live. It shouldn't exist. I swear on my best friend's life, it looked like a starved bear with legs much too long. Its fur was torn and hanging loose off its body. Its face was caved in, and the flesh was falling off its left side. It crawled across the concrete like a sickly ape who was suffering. And then I heard its cry. It haunts me every time I think of it. Somewhere between a growl and a groan inside a metal can. I've never heard anything like it. As it crawled, its back left leg was completely loose from its body. Still attached, but it wasn't moving with everything. Pure dead weight. All bone at this point. I'm close to pissing my pants, and I try to scream, but my throat tenses so much that I can't even breathe. I'm crying to myself as I see this. This couldn't be real. There's no way. It keeps crawling over to the other side of the road into the forest, making rustling sounds as it goes through the bush. As I stand there, staring into the forest, a light comes from behind me as a pickup truck is coming around the corner, down the road half a click. I sprint to that truck, waving my arms, screaming bloody fucking murder for help. The driver sees me, but clearly doesn't want any part of it, because he just floored it by me. I go running after it, screaming again for help. It gets out of sight, but I keep running, and running, and running until I get home, open the door, slam it shut, and fall to the floor sobbing. The only way I can rationalize what I saw was that there was a misshapen bear who was hit by a truck or train and somehow survived the hit and was in its final moments before dying. Its limbs made no sense, half its face was gone, and its movements just twisted and turned all wrong. I have no idea what it was. I told my family, and they all said I must have been dreaming or high again. Nobody believed me. I don't even know if I believed me. But I know that I wasn't dreaming. I couldn't have, because my shoes were still covered in dust and dirt from running home. I don't believe in God, or fate, or any of that shit. But I know what I saw was real, and it must have just been a 1 in a billion chance. I've never gone out on a late walk since. That thing was an abomination waiting to die. Story 13. A little over 18 years ago, shortly after leaving the military, I had a bizarre experience while driving from Montana to Boise, Idaho. It was a foggy February morning when I crossed into Washington State. Needing a bathroom break, I decided to wait for the next town instead of stopping on the side of the road. About 5 miles later, I saw signs for a small town. I think it was called Linden or Linder. I took the exit off I-90 toward the Spokane Valley. What I found was unsettling. The town was completely deserted. No people, no movement. Cars and businesses were present, but eerily still. A gas station was open but unmanned. A Coke delivery truck sat in the middle of the street, headlights and hazards on, doors wide open. Feeling increasingly uneasy, I left without using the bathroom and drove straight to Spokane. The experience left me deeply unsettled. Later, I couldn't find the town on any maps, including Google Maps years later. Nearly 2 decades later, on my 37th birthday, I decided to revisit the area and search for this mysterious town. Here's a summary of my journey. 1. June 19th, 2019. Prepared my RAV4 as a makeshift camper and planned the route from Boise to Libby, Montana. 2nd. June 21st, 2019. Left Boise, heading towards Libby. Stopped in Grangeville, Idaho. Had an odd incident with a water pump getting stuck under my car. 3rd. June 22nd, 2019. Spent time in Missoula with an old friend, discussing strange phenomena. Headed towards Kalispell and then Libby. 4. June 23rd, 2019. Explored Libby, my hometown I hadn't visited in 18 years. Camped at Dunn Creek near the Libby Dam. Left Libby, attempted to visit Leonia, but found the road blocked. Finally found the mysterious town, Lind, Washington. Lind, Washington turned out to be the town I had encountered years ago. Despite having a supposed population of 500, the town appeared abandoned. No people were visible anywhere. I saw a mutilated bird at one of the two intersections. The atmosphere felt forbidding, reminiscent of The Hills Have Eyes. While not supernatural, the town retained its eerie, unsettling atmosphere. I took several photos to document my findings, noting that even on Google Maps, the same blue truck was visible at the gas station from 2010. This journey, while not providing supernatural answers, confirmed the existence of the town and the strange atmosphere I had experienced years ago. Story 14 years ago, I was walking with a friend through a dark spot on a local back road. The road went down the hill into a very thick woods, passing through this lightless valley before ascending again toward a streetlight on the far side. As my friend and I approached the valley, I started to get a very odd, uncomfortable feeling about that darkened patch. We'd been this way many times before, and nothing had bothered us here. I'm not afraid of the dark in general. There wasn't an obvious reason for the feeling, but it was like a coldness went over me, a certainty of some terrible event moments away. There was a sense of being observed that seemed to be coming from the woods. I slowed down as we approached the Valley of Shadow, and the feeling didn't go away. I said, and my friend, who was way ahead of me now, turned around quizzically. As he did, there was a sudden low, barrel-chested growl from the woods to his right. It sounded like something huge and canid, something the size of a small bear. My friend went white and started mall-walking back up the hill toward me. I backed away, both with a sinking feeling in my gut that I had been right and a vague disquieted shock that I'd received a warning about it. We turned around and walked another way, and we did use that part of the road again frequently on our evening walks, but never again encountered anything like it. I watched what I swear was a pterodactyl fly over my mother's backyard one night. Surely it was just an owl flying unusually low, and surely I saw it wrong. Still, in my memory, I clearly saw two vast, leathery wings attached to a narrow body. A huge whispering kite of an animal that was gone as soon as seen. One night I heard mooing from a field I was walking past. It was loud enough and sounded distressed enough that I stopped and went carefully up the hill, picking my way through the darkness in the thought that an animal must have been caught in something. I did find the hulk of a cow as I crossed the field. It was lying still, and I no longer heard any mooing. I edged closer to see if it was hurt, and found that the animal was thoroughly dead. I don't remember it having a head at all. It was just a lonely cow corpse lying there out of sight of the road. About 2 years ago, I was making a long drive from Nebraska back home toward Illinois. This happened somewhere in some unpopulated Siberia of a rural nowhere, maybe Kansas. I didn't have the money for a hotel at the time and needed to rest, so I pulled off the road down a little gravel path, which led eventually to a cattle gate into a field. I stopped in front of the cattle gate and shut the car off. Around me was almost perfect darkness. The only lights were distant sodiums, blue and white pinpricks of light on the horizon. As the car's engine died, I suddenly realized I was hearing something. Lowing. I was hearing a large group of animals, lowing and bleating in what sounded like terrible pain. I was near a dark field that went down the hill toward a stand of trees, and it seemed to be coming from there. I heard a cow, something that sounded like a goat, the high-pitched screeching of a pig. And dear God, a man. There was a man there too, screaming full-throated, right along with the animals. It really did sound like something straight out of hell, and the man didn't sound like he was playing. That was a full-on "I'm going to die" scream, and he just kept doing it. I sat there for maybe too long, making absolutely certain of what I was hearing. I never thought to take out my phone. I'm too old to do it instinctively, and it never crossed my mind. I had chills going down my back and didn't dare breathe for a moment till I was sure of what I was hearing. There was no light down there at all, or sign of anyone. Just that unholy cacophony. At least 3 barnyard animals and a man, all screaming aloud as if they were being murdered on the spot. I hate to say that I pieced out, but that's exactly what I did. There was no light down there and no way down, and no way in hell was I going through a dark field in the middle of the night to find out what the zombie hell was happening down there. I turned over the engine, put it in reverse, and got the fuck out of there. I've seen some shit, too much of it.